Welcome to the Human Design Profiles and Entrepreneurship podcast. I'm your host, Chantel. I'm a 1-3 manifesting generator, small business strategist, workshop facilitator, and the author of the Aligned Action book series for solo entrepreneurs. Thanks for joining us today. It's an active learning experiment all about how we experience business ownership as individuals through our human design. Each episode profiles a human design enthusiast / business owner who's here to share how their personal profile lines have influenced them on their journey, how they use what they know about their profile to set intentions as entrepreneurs, and what this looks like for them personally in the day-to-day as they make decisions as business owners. Today, I'm connecting with Jocelyn, a soul art guide, Akashic records guide, and yoga nidra guide. She's also an expressive arts therapist intermodal and an EFT master practitioner. She has been working with people for over 25 years in different capacities to help them find their authenticity and purpose in life. 2.5 years ago, she lost her parents 7 days apart, and she's been traveling through her grief ever since. The journey of grief has widened her lens, honed her creativity, and brought into perspective her life story. I am honored to help others to see their power, to shift out of blocks, to feel their worth, to find their purpose, to sit at the seat of their creativity, to love themselves, to find comfort in their body, to truly live their best life. Have a listen while today's guest, Jocelyn, a 4-1, shares her story while you read between the lines. Jocelyn, I couldn't help noticing as I read your bio just now how many modalities you work with. I'm convinced that that's a one-line trait. What do you think?
Well, I think that part of that is that going into and researching and needing to know everything and then finding something similar and then also needing to connect that in and know. And then the next thing, and then, oh, wait, those two things work. And that works too. And, yeah.
Yeah. And you were just explaining to me before we hit record what intermodal means. Can you explain that? Because I feel like that's pretty one line as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of arts therapies. There's visual art therapy, dance therapy, music therapy. And intermodal is when you work within all of those expressive arts. The intermodal piece of it is if you start with like maybe you're in therapy and you're working on a story or a poem, right? And then maybe bringing a piece of music to it. And by bringing the music to it, you deepen your healing and your transformation. And then you're like, oh, I have this music, but it'd be great to do a video. That's going another level of intermodal with it, right? And then maybe you have a dance that goes with it. And so each time you shift into the modality, you go deeper.
Nothing a one line loves more than going deeper, for sure. I'm a one line as well, so I totally get that. What are a few of your current line one interests, and how does that reflect in your life and in your work?
Well, I'm currently certified as a soul art guide in body mapping, and I'm just about finishing the certification in energy mapping, but there's two more levels to it.
Okay.
So there's creation and then shamanism. And that's something I'm really deep into right now. I'm on my own journeys in all of the soul art. I'm also one of those people that I won't try to do anything with you unless I have completely and fully jumped in and know it and feel it and know the value of and benefits of something. So
Yeah.
that is like a really big thing. I'm constantly on a soul art journey these days. And at the
Mhm.
same time, I'm also really deep into soul shamanism. So just really kind of traveling and journeying into the Akashic records, into my ancestry, all of that is really intense. And I'm kind of mixing soul art and that shamanism at the same time. So I'm kind of pulling them together, braiding them together, weaving them together. And that's been my life for quite some time.
That's so interesting. What does that look like in a single client session? Do you use certain modalities and certain practices with different clients, or is it like all woven in together in a single session with a client?
In soul sessions, it's a very intuitive process. For me, I tend to immediately jump into creativity. However, if I'm working with someone, I like to follow my intuition with them. So sometimes I'll be in a session. The first thing we'll do is look at a human design chart. And
Mhm.
then maybe what we'll do after that is go into the Akashic records. We might work with a little bit of creativity prompts and just kind of following the flow of
Mhm.
where they want to go. And then I also have like packages of sessions. So then if there's a package of 6 sessions, then we can really tailor that to their journey is moving
Mhm.
and going really deep into where they want to shift.
Interesting.
But
So,
I do
okay.
work with all of that. Like it's all intertwined. I have a lot of different things I do, but
Mhm.
also it's like they all are intertwined and weave through one another. So even when I'm in the Akashic records, I'm already channeling like different intentions they can use, words they can use, different activities they can do on their daily basis to move in when they're not working with me.
Hmm. That's so interesting. Why do you start with human design?
I just feel, and this is something that I have said for a long time, as a therapist, I did not know human design years and years ago. And I'm like, every therapist should have an understanding of their human design. Because honestly, I am a generator. And if I am working with a projector, I should know that they need a certain amount of rest and time. And something that feels for me might pressure them.
Right.
And so just to understand, I don't even think they have to have a great understanding of human design, but that
Mhm.
beginning. And
Mhm.
so I don't always start with human design because some people don't really like human design. And I'll start more in the records with them or with creativity with them. But I do think that knowing just those basic pieces of human design can make a huge difference in how you jump toward or start interacting with your work.
I completely agree with you. I hesitate almost to talk as much about human design as I do because my account, although I'm not a five line, but if I start posting about something, all of a sudden people are like, "Oh, well, that's what you do." With human design, I don't want to put it at the absolute forefront of what I do. I don't want to be a human design business coach. But I do like to start with that as well because for me, maybe it's that line one foundation. Like for me, it feels like a foundation of how I will communicate with somebody else and how our energies are going to complement or contradict each other
Yeah.
is something that really is helpful for me when I navigate that. And it sounds like you kind of like you have some of the same thoughts around that with it just being foundational.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm not going into human design charts to map it for people, but
Mhm.
just to give them an understanding of, well, this is real, maybe a little bit of understanding of purpose. I'm really into the gene keys right now and the
Oh yeah.
activation sequence.
Yeah.
And just giving someone an idea of that life work evolution, right? That radiance and that purpose, and kind of pulling them just so they get a little bit of a crystal ball.
Right.
Just this is maybe the sphere that will be strong for you to work within. And then
Mhm.
it's like, let's go into other stuff and check it out. Let's see your past lives. Let's see your parallel lives. Let's see where everything's pulling in together.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So, thinking of the 4-1 as a whole, the 4-1 profile is quite rare, between 1% and 2% of the population. I'm curious, have you met any other 4-1s and have you found that you've had similar experiences?
Well, being a 4-1, I was on Facebook and I'm like, I need to find more. I've never met another 4-1 in person, but I am in
Mhm.
4-1 groups and it is
Oh,
like
there are
awesome.
4-1 groups?
Yes, there are.
Our
And
listeners are going to want to know those. We'll have to put some of them in the links.
yeah, and you know what? So I've met a lot. I've even met two other people with my exact juxtaposition. It's
Right.
amazing to just talk with another 4-1
Mhm.
and work things out. I even met another 4-1 with my juxtaposition and as a quad right. And I was like, wow, this is serious.
Right.
Wow. So yeah, I have the connections online. I've never
Okay.
met any of them in person,
Mhm.
but yeah, I have that support. And I often find that our topics in the 4-1 group go around that fixed fate, that idea of being on your train tracks.
Tell us a little bit more about that for people listening who aren't aware.
Yeah. So like the other profiles are personal or transpersonal, you're dealing with karma in different ways. But the 4-1 is the only profile that has a fixed fate. And that fixed fate being that there's no karma attached. It's just kind of like you're on your tracks. Things are going to happen. And when life shifts you and you get shaken up, a lot of times the 4-1 their tracks can get broken. I would say when I was a teenager, I probably broke my tracks and it took me like a decade and a half to get back on because I was a time in my teen years that really broke me. And so I would say it probably took me at least a decade and a half to get back to like repair my train tracks. And now I feel really forward on it. But this idea is that you don't get to really make choices. It, you move. And with a fixed fate, you have your gate that's attached to that. For me, it's the gate of fantasy or imagination, right? So like everything is on that. And your life goes. It's different than any of the other lines.
So, with the
Something
train
to get used to.
analogy, is it like you're a passenger on the train and you can't
Right.
control where the train is going or when you stop, when you start, that sort of thing? Is
Right.
that
And they say often, like with 4-1s in relationships, they're hard because if someone doesn't jump on that train with you, like you're still going. So a lot of people talk about the 4-1 as being, a hard profile because you have to stay so far on for yourself. I have 3 kids and a husband, and
Mhm.
they're off changing and growing all the time. And I change and grow in this direction,
Yeah.
you know? And so it's like, how do you deal with that? Okay, how do I take care of myself? How do I let my family and friends know that this is kind of who I am? And when I step off of this track, I break. Everything stops. The stability and the security of that one go away, you know.
Mhm. I would love to hear more about that. Can you like dive deeper somehow? I don't even know. I don't have a great question to ask you.
That line 1 is about it's about diving deep, but it's also about a security. It's, in Gene Keys, that line 1 in the purpose is the radiance is bones. It's the structure, it's the stability. And when a 4-1 goes off the tracks and they, become broken, it's that stability and safety in their life. And as a 4, your stability and safety is in that close network, so all of that kind of breaks apart.
Mhm.
And when that happens, there's such an insecurity, such an anxiety. Nothing seems to move and work in the same way. And like I said, it took me a decade, probably at least, to get some sense. I had so much healing to do just to get my tracks on. And part of being like a 4-1, and my gate of fixed fate is the fantasy and creativity and imagining and dreaming. When I was 15, I was in an abusive relationship for 5 years. And never had a chance to dream. I followed, because I was young, I followed this person who, hit me, who all kinds of stuff. And so I completely broke. And I was just like, I had no tracks, no tracks. And it took me years and years to come back to a sense of self and say, okay, it's okay to dream. It's okay to be creative. It's okay to not be accepted by everybody. And this is me. And
Mhm.
when you're on your track as a 4-1, wow, right? Everything just kind of, you magnetize in and you follow that. And it just really flows. And you start to have that sense of safety and security, that internal security in yourself. And then it builds within your network, right?
Well, that's beautiful. Thanks for being willing to go deep on that. I mean, of course you are. I really appreciate you sharing that. It's been really important for me to have all the profiles represented, especially the ones that are more rare, because,
We can't find each other.
that's right. Exactly. And I want you all to find each other and get that wisdom. So let's go back for a second to these 4-1 groups that you're in. What have you learned from being in them?
I think it's a sense of camaraderie and that networking. Just, part of that line 4 is like
Mhm.
being seen, being understood, seeing that other people with this profile have very similar responses when it comes to this idea of the tracks. Like nobody really wants it, but then at the same time you do, right? You don't have to worry about anything on your track, And I think just that sense of community for 4-1 is really important, and to find other people that get that in a way, right? There is a lot of talk in the groups for 4-1. There's always talk because they say 4-1 is the one profile without karma. We come here without karma. And so there's nothing to burn off. There's nothing to teach. There's nothing to change, right? There's question as to whether a 4-1 is their last lifetime, right? You have no karma, so this is your last lifetime. Of course, there's always that moment that you can choose regardless. But that's something that is debated highly in the 4-1 groups.
Okay.
Is this our last lifetime? That kind of thing.
Could it also be the first?
Well, no, they all say they also, I mean, I don't know. I suppose it could be anything, but everyone says it's that's the debate is it the last lifetime
Hmm,
that you'll be here on Earth?
interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And in those groups, like you also, when you're around other profiles, and actually I find being a quad right, the quad right groups are even more so me. I even find more community in those quad right groups because the way we think is just totally different. But the idea of understanding what someone's saying and going, yeah, that resonates with me.
Mhm.
That really makes sense to me.
What other communities have you found outside of human design elements that you've been able to develop that trust with and that, you really flourish within those networks?
I generally develop great relationships with my teachers. When I have a teacher in something, I connect really deeply to them.
Mhm.
And those communities in classes that I've been in connect really deeply to me. I find a lot in the spiritual community. I find a lot of support in the spiritual groups I'm in, or the communities that I'm in. For me, it's a lot of women, but that could just be from my personal life.
Mhm.
I did
How,
not have the greatest time with the community of mothers. being a
Mm,
mom of 3 kids. That was
mm,
not, and I think it's because I didn't choose those people, right? My kids chose
mhm,
them. And for
right.
me, I was like, and a lot of them failed in a lot of ways because I was like, I can't do this.
Mhm.
Maybe it was off my track. I find also a lot of community and like holistic groups, holistic health groups. I'm a medical freedom mama, and my medical freedom group, 100% supportive.
Yeah. I mean, I think for anyone listening who doesn't have the four line, that just sounded like a lot of community. Like I'm imagining the effort it would take to maintain that community. That's fairly foreign to me. Like I'm a 1-3, I'm an extrovert, but just the sheer amount of groups that you must be involved in, both online and offline.
Yeah, I'm involved, but to be honest, like my network of
Yeah.
people in person that are there for me when I need them, much smaller, maybe
Hmm.
4 people.
Well, I mean, I think that's normal. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
totally.
There are a lot of groups that I connect with and communities I can go to get support on something.
Hmm.
But for the most part, my network is, and for fours, that network is smaller.
Hmm.
It's not as big as like a 6, 5, right? The four network, it's tight knit. And
Hmm.
in order to be part of a 4-1's network, you have to be trusted. It is all about trust. And you have to show an interest in what they're doing. They're on their fixed fate, right? Have to show an interest in what they're doing. And sometimes with that line one, they can talk, you know.
Hmm.
You're like often never land. Like, what else do I have to do today?
So,
That's that line one. And so but so their network is small because the minute you have a 4-1 that loses trust in someone, they're gone. Like it takes a long time to get back in. At least
so,
that's my experience.
so on that theme of trust, how has that how has that element of the fourth line impacted the way that you've developed your business over the years?
My business has shifted and changed. It's like always changing. And I actually let go of my business while I was parenting because we homeschool. So I let go a lot of my business for a while I was doing that. And it wasn't until my parents died that I was like, okay, I'm jumping in 100% again. And it was
Hmm.
part of taking that time off and finding where I wanted to jump back into my business
Hmm.
because I don't like the world of therapy. I don't like
Hmm.
the world of insurance and prescriptions and all this stuff. It's not me. I'm like, wait, that's not good for me. So I had to shift and say, okay, where do I want to work? And I took that time. I went deep into my line one. And now that element of trust within my business is actually something it's going toward it's going to sound crazy, but my spirit team, my ancestors, my guides and guardians, that's where I'm placing my trust. And I'm placing my trust in me and kind of following and guiding that. I'm hoping that I'm staying on my tracks, right? And I'm
Hmm.
just kind of trusting that. And that is where I'm finding, at least with my business, where most of that trust is going.
I feel like that's partly the line one's journey as well. Trusting oneself, trusting that you know enough, trusting your inner voice rather than all the external voices. So you've got that
Yeah.
almost like not doubled exactly in your design, but you have that in multiple places. You have that layered in your design, which is interesting.
Yeah. And I definitely trust the synchronicities in life. Like
Hmm.
if something comes up and I'm like, where did that come from? But it resonates, I trust that. And I don't know which part of my design this is coming from, but I would probably be maybe labeled manic depressive at one point with my energy levels. Like I have tons of energy and I can get
Hmm.
15 things done in a 48-hour period. And then when that period's over, I'm like, don't touch me, don't talk to me. I'm going to sleep. And so I know that I have to trust my cycles,
Hmm.
that when I have the energy, I need to put it in. And know that there are going to be a few days where I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to be not depressed, but lazy.
Yeah.
I'm going to be working on myself for a minute.
Right.
So I have to trust also my flow, my energy, and my timing.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
there's this misconception that generators can work, 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 work and never rest. And
Yeah.
that's really not it. Just because you have, that capacity and that definition there, it doesn't mean work forever without any rest for sure.
Yeah. That's what corporations would like us to do.
Yes. Yay, capitalism.
Yeah.
Um, You mentioned earlier in the episode about being a quad, right? And so people listening, some may know what that is, some may not. Can you share about what that aspect of your design means to you?
Yeah. You can find it in your arrows. If you have a chart in front of you, it's the 4 arrows, it's the PHS system. And a quad right has them all to the right. I forget what I had read, something where they kind of put like animals to each of the
Mm.
different combinations. And there's like
Mhm.
dog and goat and cat and whatever.
Okay.
And then the quad right is Alf, the alien. Like that's
Oh, fantastic.
and when I read that, I was like, are you kidding me? And my good friend is a 1-3 quad right. And we're both sitting there like we're Alf. And sometimes it feels like you are, because quad rights are super receptive. We're here to receive, we're here to take in information, but we don't necessarily have access to it until someone asks us. So
Mm.
like a really funny thing that happens in my house all the time is we watch a movie and I'm taking it in as we go, and the minute the movie ends, I forget the whole darn movie. And I will be like,
Mm.
who was that character? What happened? And my husband will be like, you just watched it like 2 minutes ago. I'll be like, I don't remember. But yet he'll ask me a question about something specific in the movie and I got it. I know exactly what I'm saying. So we're
Mm.
meant to take in this information. It's almost like the computing system of the
Mhm.
future when AI and computers have kind of run their course, right? And that 2027, right? When everything
Yeah.
kind of gets birthed in, the quad rights are the ones who are going to be that information system. But we don't know what we know. It's just when you
Mhm.
ask us questions, things can come out. And the quad right is the move toward more babies now are being born, quad rights. It's happening all over the place. And soon there'll be many more as we move towards 2027. But the quad right is super receptive and we are feminine. So the quad left would be like the sacred masculine, and the quad right is like the sacred feminine. And all the in betweens have pieces of masculine, pieces of feminine, right? So as a quad right, you can think about all of those yin feminine qualities.
Mhm.
It's very flowing. So when you talk about quad rights in business, it's a very different world. This whole idea of strategizing, this whole idea of getting to a program and figuring out and plugging in things doesn't work for us. We have to work with the flow, with energy, with the seasons, it just doesn't work for us. But as we move closer to 2027, the world is going to be shifting to more of a quad right kind of mindset.
Mhm.
So
So let's run with that for a second. So with the embracing of spontaneity and flow, what has that looked like for you over time? I think your bio said 25 years. Have you embraced your spontaneity more over that amount of time, or have there been times when you've been pulled into that desire for
yeah.
structure, or how's that looked for you?
In the beginning of my business, I did a lot of contracting with people. So I could pick or choose who to contract with, and they did all that work,
Mhm.
which works for me because that's,
Mhm.
that makes a lot of sense to me. But one time I found myself in a position where I had to schedule art. I worked with the State Arts Council in New Jersey here, and I put artists into teaching artist positions, and I had to schedule. And I thought that was the hardest time for me to sit behind a desk and try to schedule people and try to figure out what's coming up next. Where did we go? We need to do a pamphlet for this and that for this. It was so hard for me. It was not my flow. But then as I became a teaching artist, then I could pick and choose. Oh, yeah, I'll do this residency for 18 weeks. I'll do this residency for 9 weeks. I'll do this, right? That worked really well for me. When I was
Mhm.
a therapist, I was working with brain and spinal cord injury for a while, and I picked and chose the different Kessler Institutes to work with, and I was able to choose, and I would meet somebody and I would get a sense of them and I would be able to do it. So that was like following that quad right.
Mhm.
But I also worked in a domestic violence shelter where I had to take anyone who came in and I had to work in a structure again. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, this is really hard. And I would find that my energy when I was in a place of structure I would start to like,
Contract, yeah.
I still was a great therapist, but in the moments that people weren't in my room, I was like, I just need to leave. Just let me leave." Now I really follow the flow of everything. And I do find it hard because it's not a world made for quad rights right now. Right now, we're made for that structure and that strategizing, all this stuff on AI. I was just talking to my husband this morning about putting an ad out. He's like, oh, that's not you. It's like, leave that to someone else because he's like, you're not going to like that. And he knows my quad right very well.
Mhm.
And so I find I'm really good at content creating, but I find it really hard to get into that place of, marketing.
Mhm.
So I'm actually in the middle of currently like kind of invested, like researching in that line one,
Yeah.
marketing with that idea of being a quad right. It's just you have to create your own thing. You have to kind of start from your own podium and just make your own thing because the other stuff
Mhm.
doesn't work for us in the same way.
Yeah, it sounds like choice is a really big factor
For me, it has
in all
been.
of this. Yeah. Some concepts I think transcend design in a way. Like I do think that choice is very important for all of us. If you think
Yeah.
about all of the individual pieces of all of our designs, like how individuated everything is really important and not falling into ways that other people say it should be, blazing our own trail, whether or not
Yeah.
we've got that train metaphor and we're a 4-1 or not.
Yeah, that idea of choice regardless, that free will that we have. And there's
Mhm,
also a lot of people who just want to have the structure and they want to be in it and that's comfortable for them.
mhm.
To me, it's a bit of a cage. To other people, it's a home,
Right.
and so there's that piece. And, just thinking about like Akashic records, our souls come here with certain things they want to experience. I was just saying to my husband the other day, we were talking about someone. I'm like, they maybe came in to experience this. You can't change their, because
Mm,
they're creating their own box or home
mhm,
or cage, whatever you want to look at it as. I don't know what it is to them,
mhm.
but you can't change them. They are here to do something. And until they decide they want to move in a different direction or look at it, nothing's going to happen. They don't want those choices.
Right.
They may not, right? It's like that. What did our soul come here to learn? What did it come here to feel? What did it come here to experience?
I have one more question for you. What guidance would you give to someone who's just discovered that they're a 4-1 profile?
I would definitely look into the fixed fate piece of it and see throughout your life if you've ever had a situation like I have where you went off the tracks, because that's where your healing is, right? You can almost learn from having gone off the tracks what your fixed fate is.
Mm,
You can almost see, well, what was it that broke me? So that you can magnify it, heal it, and move it forward and kind of, what's that called? Like super speed
right.
into your design a little bit.
Yeah.
And I also think that with 4-1s, to know that you do need a network and you do need to trust to look around at who you have. Who can you trust? Who do you feel that trust with? Right? Lean on them, ask them for help. When you need to do something, that network is there for you. And so if you don't have that network, you need to start reaching out to find it.
Thank
You
you.
know?
That's going to be very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you're feeling ready, we'll flow now into our closing ritual. I have here in my hands the 4-1 cards created by Christina from Global Juice HD. So you and I will take a deep breath in together. We'll let that go. This card comes in good timing. The card I've drawn says, when I am drawn to someone I can trust, they will bring me what I need. Do I need to release any messaging around being opportunistic?
Love that. I love that it just brought up trusting a person. We were just talking about that. I know for me, the idea of being opportunistic was a turnoff for a very, very long time. That idea of, almost like you're taking advantage of it, but that's what your network is there for. So if I was to even look back at what have I had to redefine that idea of being opportunistic? Yeah, it's a give and take, right?
Totally. We've talked about that in a few other episodes with 4 lines as well, about that it's correct for you to lean on your network and it's correct for you to receive from that network.
That really core element is the trust and the
Mhm,
safety, especially with the 4-1 because of that line one, that
mhm.
security. And with your network needing to feel appreciated, you're not going to feel the trust if you don't feel you're appreciated, that you're heard. So that, that's another way to think, okay, I think I trust this person, right? Do they appreciate me? Do they hear me? I have a lot to give. 4-1s have a lot to give. They are on their fixed fate, but they have a lot to give
Mhm.
in whatever their gate of fixed fateness is.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Where can people get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me on my website, which is jocelynbates.net. And I have a Substack under Jocelyn Bates. I have an insight timer where I channel yoga nidras and breathing audio. And I just put a course up there. That's also under my name, Jocelyn Bates.